meeting, and so I drove to California. Welcome, Kristin. We're so grateful that you're presenting yet another of your on the webinar series for sexandrelationshiphealing.com. So we look forward to you sharing today.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristin Snowden. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California. I do webinars and some psychoeducational lectures on how to identify unhealthy patterns and coping skills in your life and your relationships, and then how to replace them or develop new, healthier behaviors, belief systems, coping skills in life and in your relationships. So a lot of my previous videos have been the former, which is identifying what things are not working in the relationships, gaslighting, trauma in the relationship, etc. So I've been devoting the most recent set of webinars on a series on change, because the idea is that a lot of you who are here and present in these webinars are currently struggling in your life and in your relationship, and you're looking for things to change. You've realized it's not working anymore and something's got to change. So a few of my previous videos, I explored concepts of how to kind of get like a deeper spiritual change versus behavioral changes. And I talked about the 12-step model for, I guess, non-addicts. So just, let's say, normies, people who don't suffer from a typical substance abuse issue or addiction, but exploring it from a perspective of what can I learn from the 12-step model? How can I view it in a way that might resonate with me and help me kind of alter my way of thinking to improve things? So first, I went through, last week, I went through step 1 and 2, which is that step 1 is that you realize that you have a problem, that you kind of admit that whatever is going on right now in your life and in your relationship is not working. You have powerlessness to it, and life has become unmanageable because of it. Step 2 is that you come to believe that there's some kind of power greater than you, something, so whether it's the universe or an energy in this world or God, that there's something out there beyond you that can help restore you to sanity. And I talked about both those steps. So today I'm going to talk about my interpretation and perspective of step 3 and step 4, which are some pretty significant steps. So hopefully I'll get to both of them. So step 3 is that you've made a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of this higher power, this God, this energy, this divine entity, as you understand him. So Tammy was mentioning that there's the spirituality group, that there's people who really in the 12-step world just kind of help you figure out what this divine entity, energy, higher power might be, that will help you essentially surrender your power and your control over to this thing. Because that's really what it's about. It's when you're hearing the term turning your will and your life over to something, I don't know about you, but I hear the word surrendering, releasing control. And I think that the only thing that our egos, our souls, our persons despise more than, change is surrendering. So for many, when they hear surrendering or turning your will over or your life over, it means that you're weak, that you've lost, or maybe even that someone else has won. So you have to surrender. So it's really important for you to kind of understand, sit with yourself and figure out what surrendering and turning your will and life over means to you, and the thoughts and the kind of beliefs that you have around that concept. If you're seeing a therapist, that'd be a great thing to process with too. But ultimately, however you view this concept of surrendering, it's ultimately the foundation of healthy, lasting change in life. Why? I feel like I've had this verified many times in my personal life and in my professional life, that the most controlling people are the most miserable people. I think that's hard for us to swallow that pill, because also the most controlling people, because of their character types, they on the outside often appear like they're winning. They're often the people who are very successful, who have a very together appearance, who on the surface look good, right? Because their characteristics are some that they value looking like they're in control. But the bottom line is nothing in life is predictable, certain, or controllable. We can, I guess, control and monitor and do our best to deal with our emotions and our reactions in life during life's ups and downs. But we can never and will never be able to control any other person or any other entity outside of this. So our realm of control, our locus of control, is extremely limited. So every moment that we try to predict and control our life by manipulating the situation, seducing, in some way, or even lying, we are essentially exhausting ourselves, draining ourselves, and will continue the suffering and avoid the real work, which is actually working to surrender that we're not the ones in control. So for addicts, their ability, so that their surrendering is realizing that they can't maybe use their drug of choice in like a moderate way, or do it in a way that's not going to harm themselves or another person. For, let's say, normies, for just people who aren't struggling with an obvious addiction, it might be that they realize they're maybe in a relationship where there's a great deal of suffering, and that you kind of repeat these unhealthy behaviors or patterns that you just don't know how to get out of. And maybe you're invested in kind of just trying to control that person to limit the amount of suffering and harm and pain that's going on. Or often I see controlling after you've been extremely hurt or traumatized. So bad stuff has happened to you. And so you alter your life and your behaviors and all the people around you, because you're just trying to protect yourself and control and make sure that you don't get hurt and damaged again. But unfortunately, these things are completely out of our control. And so it's kind of that, they say that pattern of insanity, trying to control everything and hoping the same thing, doing the same thing to handle it. And help me out. What the sanity else on went blank is?
And expecting different results.
Yes, and expecting, yes, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Just a little story that I have about my realization when I was doing my own walk with step 3, let's say, is my mom died of pancreatic cancer. So she, within like a couple months, she was up on stage, and next moment she's given a couple months to live and she dies. And I remember that the most resounding thought in my mind was, I lost. Is that I like this anger in me that I did everything right? Like I tried to control every aspect of my life, that I was like a good religious person, that I prayed and I tithed and I did all these things that by cultural and religious norms were good things. Or that she was actually a relatively healthy person and she didn't meet any of the demographics and she still got that disease and died. And there was just this anger that I lost, that I did everything I was supposed to do and I still didn't get my way. And I know when I verbalize it, it kind of sounds like a toddler, but that's essentially kind of what you're feeding when you walk around with this insanity idea that you can control life around you. And that's why step 3 is so important, because it is very counterintuitive, right? That it's only when you surrender is when you actually become truly free. Because it's not about your will to control everything, your willpower, so to speak. It's about the power that you gain when you let go of your will. When you just stop trying to go run on that exhausting hamster wheel, trying to control every piece. Accepting what is about also about accepting what was, what will be, accepting who I am as another, as a person, and accepting others. Now, granted, that's also done with boundaries. It doesn't mean that you just kind of let life, you expose yourself to just being beaten and chewed up and spit out. That's why I talk about boundaries, and you can refer to those videos that I've previously done. But it is an acceptance of, these are the things that I can change, and these are the things that I can't. And that there's this belief that there's some kind of higher power, divine presence that can help me surrender to that. Just because you're surrendering to the unknown does not mean that you have to lose your voice or your soul or your existence. And again, that's where the boundaries come in. I have some quotes again from the Richard Rohr book that I was reading. Is we have our inner program for happiness, our plans by which we can be secure, esteemed, and in control, and are blissfully unaware that these cannot work for us for the long haul. Without our becoming more and more control freaks, it does not create happy people. And the reason why I think that there has to be this kind of higher power and this better understanding, it's one thing to just say, okay, I'm not the one in control. All these crazy banana things happen. One minute my mom can be dancing and singing up on stage, and then we can be burying her 4 months later. That's one thing. But I think the reason why there's got to be this divine entity, this higher power, and you're welcome to your own belief system, obviously, is that the idea that you turn your will and your life over to this higher power is that hopefully and this is my opinion, that it's this kind of loving, forgiving, graceful higher power that is one that you want to surrender your will over. If let's say instead, I believe that, I'm not in control, or I'm unworthy, and I just want to surrender my will and be married and have my husband make all the decisions. Well, he's another flawed person that's going to kind of fall short. And so that's also going to keep the insanity cycle going on. But if there's this idea that there's this higher power, this divine energy that is love and forgiveness and grace and understanding that we're all imperfect and we're all broken, versus a God or a higher power that is, when you turn your will and your life over to that, you instead are going to be shamed more, or judged or punished, or given like an arbitrary set of rules. That's not going to be something that's going to really fill your soul and help you in the long run. It's often kind of what makes you become more manipulative again, and make you do things out of duty and obligation, and trying to avoid shame or hide your shame. And that's not the goal. So step 4 is one of the most significant steps in my opinion. And it is make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So in a nutshell, and maybe Tammy can chime in with her, format for step 4. Some sponsors will have you kind of just call them out and just write about all your pain and your trauma and your hurt and your resentment, just kind of all the stuff that you are struggling with, things you fear about yourself, the way you've harmed others, the way you've harmed yourself, the way you've been harmed, the resentments that you carry around. This is serious, serious work that you put in. You make a searching and fearless moral inventory of who you are as human. And I think if that doesn't scare the heck out of you, I don't know what would. Because for me personally, I'm one of those people who was just never good at criticism. Or like opportunities for growth. I would kind of freeze up when someone was like, oh, well, you were a little off pitch, you could sing a little bit better, or this writing isn't very good, you need to kind of do a couple more drafts, or I don't know, you're a terrible therapist, something like that. I am not good at receiving any kind of feedback from other people. And now that I've done more work, I can kind of look into that. And I feel like I've always struggled with criticism, opportunities for growth, feedback from other people, because my ego was always too fragile to handle someone pointing out like a chink in my armor. You know, my armor of, I swear I'm enough. I swear don't look under this. You know, I'm smart enough, I'm good enough, and doggone it, people like me. I was so invested in having that be my outward, facade, where what I was hoping everyone would perceive of me, that I couldn't take feedback that it's like, oh no, they're on to me. I'm a fraud. I'm completely imperfect. I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm scared out of my mind every day that somebody's going to find out. So, that's the first set of work that you have to do, right, before you can even go into the step 4. So the idea too is, like, with the steps 1, 2, and 3, is that, okay, I realize I have a problem. My life's become unmanageable. Hopefully I'm going to believe that there's this higher power that can kind of receive my muck, my darkness, and receive it with this loving forgiveness, grace that I can't even show myself. And I can't, experience it from another flawed human being. And then those 3 things will help draw the strength for me to take that really scary look in the mirror, where I take that deep inventory of all those dark things that I'm scared of doing. So the goal is not the perfect avoidance of how flawed and wrong your choices are, and how imperfect you are, or how you've been harmed, because that's just not possible, and we kind of need to surrender that, but acknowledge and own the struggle of trying to achieve growth in this entire lifetime, trying to be the best person that we can be, and then we'll fail miserable at it, and own it and be accountable for it, and gain wisdom and camaraderie, all because of it. Acknowledging how you fall short is not meant to rub your face in the mud and kind of make you feel worse about yourself. So that's kind of just rub your face in the shame. It's to humble your soul and envelop you in this, like, kind of truth and humility that we're all in the same state of struggle, that we're all imperfect. People who are more transparent and admit their blind spots and personality flaws are actually quite easy to love and be with. And in my opinion, and then when it's done, by the way, with boundaries, so you're not just going around and telling everybody all your darkness all the time, it's done within a healthy environment and a protective environment. But it's that often when people are owning their shortcomings, they kind of feel safer, because you're like, oh, me too. Oh, maybe if you're just being honest about this, hopefully you're honest in other realms of your life, and that feels safer to me. So few final comments is that the more you're attached or invested in maintaining a front of perfection, or at least not owning that you've fallen short and that you're flawed, the more superficial and shallow your soul can be. Conflicts, relationship difficulties, moral failures, poor decision-making are all necessary to expose our flaws. They're necessary, and they're necessary for growth. We experience freedom and liberation once we can clearly see that this is who we really are. You don't need to disguise yourself anymore. And then the more we deny it, the more the shame can fester and spread. So one of the quotes that I like is that only the soul knows that we grow best in the shallow lands. And so it's just saying that that our growth often comes when we embrace our shortcomings. And we can only do it when we do these kind of searching and fearless moral inventories of how we fall short, how others have fallen short against us, the resentments we carry, the shame voices that we have, etc. So I'd encourage you, with the help of a professional, or if you are in some kind of 12-step program, to take the opportunity to do things like this. That's it for the lecture today.
So much great stuff. Kristin, I'm so appreciative of that. And I hope that this is being recorded, so I hope you'll go back and listen to that again. I think, and I've shared this before, and particularly last week, that the steps are so important to me and help me learn how to live life. I was ill-equipped, and so they gave me the recipe for doing life on life's terms. You talked about step 3, and it's made a decision, because one of the things as a perfectionist, it was like, I'd turn my will over, but I'd take it back. So then I felt like I was failing. So somebody shared with me, it's made a decision, and I get to remake that decision, because, things will be going along really well, and then they're not. And I'll go, oh, that's because I tried to take control back over. And, you're sharing about surrender. It is counterintuitive if that surrendering is actually giving us the strength to I understand what you're saying when you're talking about control, and people that try to control everything are the least happy, because you can't control things. Mark Anthony Lord, we have a recorded breakdown of the Serenity Prayer, and I love that because it reminds me that the only thing I have control over is my actions and reactions. I can't control what you do. I can't control what anybody else does. I can't control what the traffic is like. I can't control all those things, and I go crazy trying to control them. And if all my happiness is based on if I get everything in my life to line up perfectly, I'm never going to be happy, because stuff is never going to line up perfectly. Somebody's going to be late, somebody's going to not, whatever, if it's all on those external factors. But if I can learn to embrace that I'm just part of humanity, and share with other people where I'm at with it. And, the whole false facade of I'm perfect. And, don't look, like the Oz, don't look behind the curtain. You'll see all the, that I'm not really who you thought I was. But that also doesn't give me an opportunity for you to really know who I am. So if you say you like me, you only like the facade. So I know you don't really like who I really am. And so I'm never really able to be connected to people, because they don't really know me. And if they did, they wouldn't like me. And that was really hard for me to become willing to let people see the behind the scenes. But now I've been around long enough that it's like, if you don't like who I truly am, that's okay. And then we're not supposed to be in the same space. And that's all fine. You don't know it. Not everybody has to like me. That was another huge one, but it's okay. But I would rather relate to you in a authentic way than in a false facade way. So that was really important for me. And then step 4, it's, it is really tough, but I've seen so many people relapse that are supposedly in recovery on that particular thing. They're too scared of looking behind the curtain and looking at themselves. And one of the things that was really key to me was my sponsor had me write down and write the good, because it's a searching and fearless moral inquiry. Where did I actually succeed? What are some of my good points? Because I could, the list of the negatives was, 3 miles long, and and so to be able to start going, well, I am, I do care about people. I want to be a caring person. And some of the things that I actually was successful at, or trying to be, or had qualities of, doing that, adding those things to the list was critical for me as well. But I think having, taking that honest moral inventory, and we'll talk about step 5, next time too, but I know it gave me a chance to clean up the trash. It was like I have all this stuff that's in there festering and causing me more shame, because I'm so concerned about that and keeping this false front. So it gave me a place to start writing, and my sponsor said, just write, don't think, just write. That was, because if I thought about it, I was like, do I really want to put that down? Well, I don't know if I really want to put that down. No, so it's like, just write whatever. And I got kind of in the groove, and I made myself sit down and write for 10 minutes or whatever it was. I had to do it, because there are people that are, they've been around the tables for, a year or two, and, well, I'm working on it, but they're not really. So setting with intention to do that work. I also like that you talked about, humility. A lot of people perceive that humility is shame, but I was told that, true humility is having a clear and honest ownership of who and what you are, both the good and the bad. And it's not, it's not like, oh, false humility where, oh no, I'm not that good, whatever. It's like, yeah, no, these are some things I do well, or here's who I am that's good, and here's some places where I struggle, and that's okay. So it doesn't have to fill me with shame, but it gives me a foundation for where I am, and to have the ability to strive to continue to work on things that I perceive are my character defects, so that I can minimize those, but also understand what are my character strengths. So like I said, the steps have been so critical in my life, but I think anybody, even outside, like you're talking about the normies, I think that there's such a great way to live. And even if you go, well, that would be helpful for me. Well, great. Pick the pieces that, could inspire your life or help, round out your life. Great. It's just good living.
Right. And I actually appreciate what you were saying about step 4, because it's really funny. When I ever describe the concepts around step 4, I always say it's about acknowledging your good, your bad, your light, your dark. But I think it's really interesting, because some people who've actually gone through 12 steps will focus in on just the negative. So where I've been hurt, where I've been harmed, where my resentments are. So I really appreciate you acknowledging that a step 4 can include affirmations and validations of my character strengths as well, because I think that's really important when you're doing this really, really, really difficult work.
And I think it's probably easy to be on either side of it, where I just want to tell you about all my good stuff, but I was so shame-filled. I was so broken that, like, I just knew all the dark, and I didn't think about the light thing. So that was a huge, that was a huge step for me to be able to do that. So we have a question. Are you ready for questions, or you have other thoughts?
Sure.
Okay. I'm a late 20s male. I celebrate 1 year of sobriety. Woohoo! And tomorrow, and I just want to say that I believe in God, but I have trouble being able to turn my will and life over to something that I can't see. I would really like some insight on how to be open-minded and learn how to understand it a little better, so that I can have a better relationship with my God. So this is an awesome question, and I know so many people get stuck on that. And I would really invite you to come to Mark Anthony Lord's webinar tomorrow night and watch some of the previously recorded ones. But your thoughts, Kristin?
That's a good one. Thank you for challenging me today. I think ultimately what worked for me, because that's such like a deeper intrinsic question, I think, because we all hear and experience things differently, is I think at the time when I got better at this, I'd tried 5 million ways to control it on my own. And the only other option was to try it this way. And again, like I said, it was around that time too, where I kind of suffered the ultimate loss of my mom, you know, and that I've lost, and that it made me so angry, and it affected my personality and my outlook on life so much that it started making my marriage fall apart, and other, you know, just bleeding in, that the control idea had gotten so just out of hand for me, right? So that's that powerlessness, unmanageability part that it got like I had like a knockdown, drag out street fight with it, and it won.
Yeah.
That it was just like I'm too exhausted to have this. I think another thing too that helped, and that's why I added in that piece of that it has to be a kind of a loving, forgiving, accepting God.
Yes.
Is I think part of my problem, and I'm going to get a little religious here, is that there's this concept with a lot of religions of like retributive justice. So when you've done bad, you deserve to be punished. And that there's these kind of things, that behaviors and things that you can do to get forgiveness and be in the right, you know, level with God. And that you're bad and you're sinful and you're wrong. And so I don't think at first I wanted to surrender my will to that kind of God, because that one made me feel as shameful and guilty and bad as I'd been working my whole life to cover up.
Yes.
So I think when I kind of understood a different level of God, one where all of us are constantly drowning in this fearful shame that what if we're not enough? What if we are unlovable? What if we're just flawed to the point that, you know, we're just eternally broken forever? That maybe there is this God, this higher power that can love us in spite of it all, you know? And that helped me as well.
Yeah, I meant to touch on what you talked about with love. I do believe that God is love, and I believe that God wants us to experience and be loving and have joy. And so to have a punishing God that was, you know, you did bad, therefore you're going to be punished, you know, I thought about you with your mom, and I think my reaction would have been, I did something wrong and therefore I'm being punished. My mother is being taken away from me. That's where, you know, that was how I operated in things, is like, I'm being punished for all the bad things I've done. So, but you know, if you can think of your addiction as being your higher power, because you focused your energy, if you focused everything on your addiction, you know, we're giving control over to our addiction when we're in active addiction. And so for me, you know, even the first sense of having a higher power is being, you know, the other people in my recovery group, you know, because they had more knowledge than me. You know, I could see that they had something that I wanted, and they had more knowledge and experience in recovery than me. And that was helpful as a first step of being able to look at something outside, and I could see them, and that was helpful too, you know, where you know, it took me a while. I was raised in the church. I'm gonna be honest, I was raised in the church, and it took me a while to extricate myself from all the sin and negative things that I had experienced in or even some of the stuff that I made up in my head about it. It could have even just been me, but let's just say it took me a while to be able to engage with any kind of organized religion again. And it's all personal choices. There's lots of people that never do. And, you know, so I'm just talking about what worked for me. For me, I was more quickly able to see that there was a higherness in the people that were around me. And I loved, like I said, what you said about love. And, you know, I really, I would invite you to look at it in, you know, in a way. So Mark Anthony Lord, I referenced this already, but he talked about, you know, throw out your entire version of what your higher power was if it was hurtful and harmful and whatever negative words you can, and what would you vision as a higher power for you? If you know, and if it's love, well, then how would you perceive that, and what would you want from that? So there's lots of different ways, but I'll tell you, the biggest thing for me was the 12th step, and we'll get to it in future weeks, but it says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. And the point of working these steps is that I will have a spiritual awakening. It doesn't talk about that I'll quit drinking, or I'll quit acting out with sex, or I'll quit whatever the behavior was. But working through those steps, that's where we get to. So we end up with this peace and serenity, which is what I really believe my higher power gave me, is peace and serenity and acceptance of myself and my surroundings. So hopefully that's somewhat helpful. So Mark Anthony, who, I was talking so fast. You are right. I talked terribly fast. I apologize. Dr. Rob can outdistance me on the speaking fast. Mark Anthony Lord. So he's, it's Lord. It's kind of funny because he is ordained. So he's Pastor Lord, which is really funny. But if you go to sexandrelationshiphealing.com on the webinars, you'll see some of the previously recorded ones. And again, he offers one on Thursday evenings at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So it's Mark Anthony Lord. So hopefully that's helpful. Kristin, using the example of your mom, please clarify how these steps looked. How did they help you find peace with her illness? Have you gone into this a bit more since I've typed, or you have gone into this a bit more since I've typed? So yeah, and it maybe even with her illness, it might have been after her death.
Right. Gosh. Okay. So using that example, and again, like I said, this can be in like the insanity of your marriage, where you're miserable, or a job, or another relationship where things aren't working out. But let's say the step application for the loss of my mom is that, again, I went into it with a belief system that I was the one in control, like that this higher power, that I was raised in a church too. So I was raised with this belief that there was a God, but I just didn't understand him the same way. So I was the one in control, actually, and I was gonna outthink this world and outperform this world so I could win. So I had a strong focus on I'm good enough as long as I'm attractive, as long as I'm smart, as long as I'm getting A's, as long as I'm married, as long as I am a good parent, as long as I have like the unconditional love of my mom. And so I always say that one by one, all those things were kind of taken from me. I think it was, however you want to interpret it, it doesn't matter how you want to interpret it. But so I lost all these facades of things that represented, my value and worth. And then I had to internally find it in myself, and with a love and acceptance of a higher power instead. So basically, and that released a lot of my anger, a lot of like this exhausting kind of running on a treadmill, trying to like be enough, and this highly defensive nature that I had, again, because my ego was so fragile. I was so invested in putting up this front that I am strong enough and smart enough and good enough, that I was highly defensive anytime someone or something was possibly kind of pointing out that I was losing that battle, that battle of perfection enough. So I don't know if that was helpful to you. Can you maybe mark that? Please clarify how these steps fit in and looked. How did it help me find peace? Is that, so let's say the way that it helped me find peace for this particular thing of my mom dying was that I thought I lost, right? And so it was like, you know what? It just made me this really bitter, resentful person, Because if I looked at other people, all I would do is look at other people and be like, God, you're an asshole. Like, why are you still alive? Like, or you're a horrible person. Like, why do you still get a mom? And so it just fed this really like dark, angry person that always compared myself with other people. It made me super judgy and self-righteous, because I think I still wanted to buy the fact that life was controllable and contingencies were controllable, and that, you know, being a good Christian actually saved you from the chaos and insanity of life. But really, that just made me a really resentful person who hated God and who hated anybody else who had, let's say, better luck in life than I felt like I had. So victim crown, hardcore.
Well, and I hear you use win and lose. You know, you're very clear on win and lose. You know, and
Right.
and I, you know, you talked about the bitterness, but I have to imagine that the feelings while you had this, like I'd like you to share more about how you really felt internally, when you're trying to have this facade. You know, because I know it wasn't at peace, but were you buying into this? I'm winning, or were you, you said I have a fragile ego, you know, while you have this facade of, you know, I'm all that and more, you know.
I know, but that's the thing. It's like I think that stuff's so unconscious. You don't even know that you're doing it when you're doing it. So all I can think about is I just have these memories of how highly defensive I was, you know, of me like looking at 80-year-olds walking around and be like, why doesn't my mom get to be like that? Or someone in a moment, like, let's just show how fragile my ego is like, I was with good friends and I made like this really weird, funny laugh. It came out. And so my good friend, who's a safe person to me, kind of made fun of my laugh. But I was so fragile egoed, like the very next thing I did was like, I like shamed her and said something really mean to her. Like, how dare you mock my imperfections, you know, even though, but again, like the person today that kind of embraces that we're all flawed and little things like that you can laugh at. I was so fragile egoed that like, I just couldn't even handle that. You know, I couldn't handle someone making fun of a silly flaw of mine. So I don't know if that helps.
Well, and I think you know, you talked about luck too. So you're perceiving it, it's interesting to me because I hear winning and losing, but then they have luck. So you're doing all the right things to win, but they got lucky, you know, and how dare them? You know, really, you know, how dare them have the luck, because darn it, you're working your hardest to win at this. So, and by, you know, no good intention or no good work of theirs, you know, they got lucky and could even be perceived as having beat you, because like you said, the 80-year-old woman walking down the street and she's alive and your mom isn't. So
yeah, it's and I think of it, I guess, in the steps. She adds in, yes, the feeling that you lost. What did you do, say to yourself to find peace? Just saying, I surrender. If only, right? I mean, for me, unfortunately, my story is just sheer exhaustion. Like, that's where it started, but we're talking like 2-3 years down the line, and it's like marriage is falling apart, kids are young, and I'm just drenched in like complete shame that I'm like not enough. And all my facades have kind of been exposed. And it's just like I had a knockdown, drag out street fight with a higher power and surrendering. And it was only by that surrendering beating me to the ground that I won. I mean, I hate to say it, but it just the sheer exhaustion of, okay, there's been so many things, so many messages in my life that I am not the one in control. And in fact, it only made it worse that I was, you know, a therapist, and I could very rationally watch other people and be like, man, you're not the one in control. Like, the more you're trying to control this marriage or this addiction, it's like I think that's what helped me too, is I was in treatment watching these people trying to control their lives with substance use, with kind of manipulative behavior. And I watched them from the outside looking in, and it's like, what is one of the biggest problems going on right now? You think you have control. Like all this stuff that's happened to you, most of it has nothing to do with you, and you just personify it and you take it on as this dark cloud that you carry with you everywhere. And I just saw that there was a bunch of imperfect, broken people sitting in those group rooms that just all wanted one thing, which was to just be loved, despite their flaws, despite how much they've screwed up, and despite all the horrible things that have happened to them. And they just wanted to be loved. And I think that's what helped me surrender.
One of the things that helped me surrender was, and I was terrified. I was 21 years old and I'm being dropped off at treatment. I knew I needed to be there, but I also didn't want to be there. It was, right. My dad said, you're a really strong person. You know, I know you can do this. And I remember thinking, Dad, you don't understand. I have tried everything in my power. And I remember thinking, I've tried everything in my power, and here I am at treatment, you know? So it was one of those clear, and how did that work for you? You know? Right. And so I think I had, entering treatment, I had this, I had some inkling of surrender. Granted, did I keep trying to take it back? Sure. But I think I knew on some level that what I was going to do, anything that I tried to do, was not ultimately going to be successful. And I needed these people, you know, and I needed somebody to go, hey, here's how you're going to do this. Here's how you're going to live a life, because, you know, I sure didn't have a clue. So that was, you know, that was part of my surrender process too. So any other questions or comments from those of you joining us?
Those are really amazing questions. And I wish that I had a more concrete answer, but I think that's also the part of surrendering is leaning into the fact there's nothing concrete. There's no one answer that's going to fix this and cause your soul to kind of like open up and embrace this. And in fact, Tammy mentioned that she'll go back to the default, and so will I, of trying to manipulate and control all the issues. And then you're like, oh wait, why am I miserable, or why am I exhausted? And it's like, oh, I fooled myself into thinking I was in control again. And how can I relinquish and surrender control in this part of my life and just control, you know, my reactions to it, my emotions. So this is like 10 steps forward, 8 steps back, 4 steps forward, 13 steps back. It's not a like epiphany that just lasts a lifetime.
True. I'm not all, you know, sunshine and
yeah, you're so surrendered all the time.
No, in fact, you know, it was funny that one of my somebody shared with me, I was going through something last year. It was going to be a family interaction, let's put it that way, the big family thing. And there's personalities within the family structure, shall we say, that are very controlling, and I bump up against my control stuff. And somebody said, use the term, not my circus, not my monkeys. It became my mantra. It like, and I'll tell you what, I was like, I wish somebody had told me this early in recovery, because I'll catch myself going, you know, it's my circus. And I go, no, wait, not my, you know, so another part of the serenity prayer, in a more comical way, you know, of like, I have no control over these people or this situation, and it's affecting my serenity. And that's what I'm not willing to do anymore, is let all this stuff, you know, ruin my serenity. So to surrender and go, you know what, I'm going to this event and stuff will not be the Tammy way, and it's going to be okay. And then I'm like, you know, versus, you know.
Right.
Okay, so we've got a couple more questions. When I first started going to COSA support groups, right after my shocking discovery with my husband of 37 years, I found the codependency disease model to be hurtful and blaming. Amen. I was devastated and looking for support. To be told that I had as serious a disease as my sex addict husband, who had been acting out for decades, was hurtful and added to my pain. After 7 months of going to COSA, I am more able to see the value of the 12 steps, although I would choose some different language. Thankfully found Rob Weiss and Michelle Mays and heard about attachment, betrayal, trauma, and codependence. When I first listened to a podcast with them, I started crying. Oh, I'm not surprised. Yeah. When they spoke right to me and how I felt. I feel that framing the 12-step program with attachment, betrayal, trauma, and codependence would draw more betrayed partners in, especially early on when the crisis is so raw. That makes a lot of sense. Is there a chance to meld these concepts together to what I think would be a better welcome to newcomers who are joining the club that none of us ever wanted to join? Do you have plans for helping to form new codependent support groups across the country? So we started the Codependence webinar. So thank you for all of that. And I'll tell you what, I hear daily from multiple partners that are like, thank you for codependence. And I felt so hurt, shamed, villainized, whatever, by the codependency model. So it's really resonating. We started a Codependence webinar with Kim Buck last Friday. It's up on the website. I think if you were not able to attend that, I would invite you to watch that. But she's co-authoring the Codependence workbook with Dr. Rob. And so she's going to start going through some of the tools to look at how we can, with attachment and love, but support. And like, Kristin has shared with boundaries, like what's working for you, what's not working for you. Do I think codependence will be a movement? I do, and that's just me personally talking, but I'm seeing this, whether you're a loved one of an alcoholic, a sex addict, if you're a loved one with somebody with chronic mental illness, all of that, all of that deserves support, and and looking at it from the lens of love and attachment. So, but I think it's going to be a grassroots effort. I don't think we can create support groups. I think just like the 12 steps, it will take people that are in the situation that go, I want to be part of this. We're looking to have codependence intensives. We're working with therapists so that they have the knowledge to be able to look at things from a codependent standpoint. Dr. Rob did a webinar for over 1,000 therapists a couple weeks ago. So we're doing our best, but the book just came out last September and it's going to take some time. So the more things that you do in talking about it and sharing about it will help us help other people. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay, and this is a continuation. I did surrender, but I think the missing link is I didn't allow myself to grieve. Oh, yeah. Kristin, you want to talk about grieving?
It sucks. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the didn't allow myself to grieve also goes with the codependence kind of movement incorporating 12 steps. You touched on something, the previous commenter said something similar to this commenter, which is that how do you incorporate 12 steps when you're so raw? I'm not sure if that's possible at that time.
Right.
Right. Like when your reality and your world has completely unraveled and you're in complete crisis mode, I don't know if that's the right time to be doing a fearless and searching inventory of your good and bad.
Right.
Your heart is so raw and you're so scared and you're so hurt. I mean, with the surrendering, I think I spent a couple years hating God and hating a higher power and being very invested in severe anger towards this universal higher power thing before I was able to kind of feel safe enough to reprocess it and redefine it in my life. So all these things come in your own time.
Totally agree. So and I think with the COSA groups, they've been around a long time and they have a way that they do things. And so what Codependence is doing is looking at kind of flipping things on its ear. So it's, and there are going to be people that are resistant to it. And some of them are going to go, no, COSA saved my life or saved my marriage or whatever. And so they're going to be invested in it. And I get that. And I'm not diminishing it. We're not saying that's all bad. We're just saying, this seems to be resonating with lots of people and looking at it. And even from a professional standpoint, therapists are taught to, there's crisis intervention. So, and here are the two things that you do, and it isn't making them look at, your your childhood stuff, family of origin stuff. It's, let's interrupt the system right now. So, so stay tuned with that. So somebody says, I watched Kim's Prodependence webinar. The timing of most webinars do not allow me to participate live and ask questions. The only reason I'm here today is because it's a snow day and I'm home, and I'm glad you're available. So to that point, we are working on having some things available, and on other times. Dr. Rob and Seeking Integrity are opening a program in Thailand, and now they are on a completely opposite time frame, and there will be some things that are done during their days in Thailand that will probably time out nicely for people that are looking for evenings or early morning before you go off to work or whatever. But the reason we did Kim's and this one as, some of them as webinars, it's because we can record it and people can engage with them later. And so you're right, you don't get to ask questions specifically, but we are finding that a lot of questions do get asked. And so hopefully some of those that you would bring to the table are, are being asked, and we'll continue to do more. We have the Prodependence partner group and it's mostly women that are going to that, but we also are starting the men's group. But, those drop-in groups, I'm looking to have a partners support group. So this would be different than COSA. It would be a Prodependence aligned drop-in group. And we're looking to have some of those starting on evenings and weekends, US time. So watch, we're continuing to fill in the schedule with things. Dr. Rob's vision is that 24/7, if you're looking to connect with somebody, that there will be places on this site that you can do that. We're just not there yet. So we're working on it. So, but thanks for asking, and I'm sorry it's a snow day, but we're really glad you were able to join us live today. So I think we're out of time. We are. So Kristin, thank you so much as always for your contribution. We're so appreciative of you. Kristin donates her time. She's here of her own accord, and we're super grateful for that. So, we hope to see you the next time. Watch the calendar on sexandrelationshiphealing.com for ways that you can connect with each other and with us. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us.